attention to the people in the street, crying out for accountability.
Instead of starting off by telling you what I think about communism as it relates to morals, I'm going to read to you some of their own words. This is from the Communist Schools of 1963. In 1963, there was a group of communists here in the U.S. that got together and wrote down a list of goals that they wanted to accomplish. I'm going to start off by reading goals 22 through 25. They read, "Continue discrediting American culture by degrading all forms of artistic expression. An American communist cell was once told to eliminate all good sculpture from parks and buildings, substituting shapeless, awkward, and meaningless forms. Control art critics and directors of art museums. Our plan is to promote ugliness, repulsive, meaningless art. Eliminate all laws governing obscenity by calling them censorship in violation of free speech and free press. Break down cultural standards of morality, promoting pornography, obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV." Basically what they were wanting to do is take all good forms of art and break down what I would call the disgusting barrier. Basically when you would see some form of art and it was very obscene or pornographic, you would turn and go, oh man, that's just repulsive. What they wanted to do was break down that barrier and degrade humanity to nothing more than an animal, basically, so there wasn't any repulsion. Well, is that good? Is that going to help society? I'm going to get more to the biblical aspect of that later, but just think of that in our society today. What movie can you go to now and it does not have some sort of obscenity in it or something almost close to pornographic? It's almost impossible nowadays to not see things like that. So I'd have to say those goals have probably been accomplished. Goal number 26 reads, "Present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, and healthy." Okay, let's start with the healthy part of it. Is homosexuality and promiscuity healthy? If it was healthy, would we have to deal with AIDS? Would we have to deal with sexually transmitted diseases? No. Therefore, common sense would probably tell you that homosexuality is not healthy by any means. And calling it normal and natural, if it was natural, wouldn't men be having children? But they're not. So I think you can look at that and go, common sense tells you that those things are not true. But if you look at today, if you try to discredit, homosexuality and say that's not normal, natural, and healthy, oh my gosh, you're called all sorts of names. So again, I'd have to say that that point has probably either is being accomplished or is accomplished. Numbers 27 and 28 read, "Infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with social religion, discredit the Bible, and emphasize the need for intellectual maturity which does not need a religious crutch. Eliminate prayer or any phrase of religious expression in schools on the grounds that it violates the principle of separation of church and state." So what they're wanting to do is take the true gospel of the church, what they call revealed religion, the Bible we call, God's revealed truth. Take that and replace it with a social gospel, what I would call a watered down gospel. So they wanted this more social thing, and to eliminate prayer because, oh my gosh, you can't have prayer because of separation of church and state, and that's a whole other point that I could go off on, but I won't in this segment. But communism needs to get rid of true Christianity because true Christianity completely defies all the aspects of communism. I just want to read one verse to you here. This is from Ephesians 4:28. It says, "Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labor, working with his hands the things which is good, that he may have to give to him that needeth." What it's saying is, look, if you're able to work, stop stealing. Stop just not working. Work with your hands and then take some of what you have and you can give it to those that really need it. But with communism, they literally are taking people's possessions to make sure everybody is equal. Again, the Bible talks about in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's ox. if you're coveting somebody's ox, that means it's his, and that means it's private property. So it completely defies communism. So they have to get rid of that in order to have a pure communist society. Numbers 29 through 31 read, discredit the American Constitution by calling it inadequate, old-fashioned, out of step with modern needs, a hindrance to cooperation between nations on a worldwide basis. Discredit the American Founding Fathers, present them as selfish aristocrats who had no concern for the common man. Belittle all forms of American culture and discourage the teaching of American history on the grounds that it was only a minor part of the big picture. Give more emphasis to Russian history since the communists took over. I want to laugh when it says to present the founders as selfish aristocrats, because number one, hardly any of them were aristocrats. Most of them were farmers. Some of them were lawyers. But even those who are lawyers, like John Adams, he gave up his law practice in order to help form this new nation. That was half of his income. He was a farmer on the other side, and his wife had to take that over. Samuel Adams, his cousin, was so poor, even before the Revolutionary War, that before he went to the Continental Congress, his neighbors had to take up a collection to buy him a new suit of clothes that would be fit for him to wear, because he didn't have anything to wear that was proper to go to that kind of event. As far as being rich and selfish and had no concern for the common man, Benjamin Franklin invented so many things to help the common man that it's not even funny. If you've ever heard of the potbelly stove, that was Benjamin Franklin's invention. The women were cooking over open fires, and the potbelly stove created a way for women to cook that was safer. Benjamin Franklin created that, so I think he had a little bit of concern for the common man. And again, communism needs to discredit the Constitution and the Founding Fathers, because the Constitution, of course, is obviously completely against communism, and the Founding Fathers and their principles of economics were, again, completely against that. In number 40 and 41, and then I'm going to go back to 17, it kind of explains how the communists plan to put all these ideas into society. They say, discredit the family as an institution, encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. 41. Emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influences of parents. Attribute prejudice, mental blocks, and retarding of children to the suppressive influence of parents. They need to break down that nuclear family. The family is the foundation of this country. Without the family, this country wouldn't be here. If you break down the family, if you tell children that, oh, you don't need to listen to your parents, you need to be taken away from the negative influences of your parents, especially if the parents are Christian, godly parents, and you need to be focused on these communist goals, kids are naturally going to do that. I know for myself personally as a teenager, and I know all teenagers struggle with this, we want to go our own way. We think we know better than mom and dad. We think, that we can do it on our own. When in the end, we pretty much figure out that mom and dad know best, and it's probably to go their direction most times. So that's one of the ways that they hope to put these communist goals into effect with young people. Another point was in 17. This was another way they hope to get the communist goals in. It says, get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for socialism and current communist propaganda. Soften the curriculum. Get control of teachers' associations. Put the party line in textbooks. We hear of textbooks that are just completely wrong. So, as far as breaking down the family, I think that's happened a lot. Families are very separated. Divorce is extremely high and very easy. So young people, I just beg you, wake up. Communism is not an abstract on the other side of the world idea. It is here in work in the U.S. Pretty much every single principle or goal that I've read to you right now has in some way, shape, or form been accomplished. It's not that far away, and we need to start waking up and realizing it is here and start standing up and speaking out against it. Now, you may say, well, why should we speak out against it? Why are things like the art forms and obscenities and pornography wrong? Why is homosexuality? Why should we, say that that is wrong? Well, I'm going to read you a couple of passages of the Bible, because ultimately we can read all the history books we want to, but this book is the source of all knowledge. It's the source of our faith. It is what our founders built this nation on. And so this relates to homosexuality and what God says about homosexuality. This is in Romans 1:26 and 27. For this cause God gave them up unto vile affections, for even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves the recompense of their error which was meant. The recompense of their error, I would have to say, is probably AIDS. That there is punishment for homosexuality because it is not natural. Now, I want to make one point here. God will forgive people who have been involved in sodomy. He will forgive them if they turn from it. But God clearly says it is wrong. It is not natural. Now, when we come to the part about obscenities and pornography, why shouldn't we put those things before our eyes? In Philippians 4, verse 8, it says, Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Do obscenities and art and media and pornography, are those pure? Are those lovely? Are those just things that we need to be setting our minds on? No, they're not. They're things that have broken up families and destroyed lives. So you can see, biblically, these things are completely wrong. I know it may sound weird for me to be turning to the Bible for the answers, but that's where the founders turn, and that's where we have to turn. Now, there are two other points that I want to go over, and those are points 38 and 39. But that's a whole other big thing, and I'm going to have to do that next time. But I want you to think on something. I want you to go look up these things in the Bible and look at our culture and see how our culture is being used to run these communist goals. They are here, and we need to stand up for what's true and fight for what is true.